Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Marienville Forest County Bigfoot Festival, right? Yeah. So you guys want to hear the most scared I've ever been in the woods? All right. So a lot of people ask me, like, what kind of animals are you scared of being in the woods? Like, are you scared of Bigfoot? Are you scared of like snakes or bears or coyotes or anything like that? I said no. Here's my scared story. I was in Stoke State Forest in northwest New Jersey. Setting up for an expedition. I was there with one other person a day before the expedition, and it was cold. It was in February, so it was cold, but it was a nice night. I had a little one-person tent, so you couldn't even sit up or stand up. Couldn't stand up in it. Couldn't even sit up in it. Could only lie down. So it was late at night, and I had just curled into my mummy sleeping bag in my little one-person tent. So I'm all curled up like this, and the moonlight is shining through the tent like it's glorious, beautiful thing. And then you see the silhouette come over the top of the tent. Right? Here it comes, here it comes, here it comes. And then it starts descending. And what is it? A spider. Most scared I've ever been in the woods, ladies and gentlemen. I screamed. People ask me what I would do if I actually see a Bigfoot in the woods. I would scream just like I saw that little spider in the tent. Ladies and gentlemen, introducing today's last speaker for the Forest County Bigfoot Festival speaker lineup, J.W. Burchick of Butler County, Pennsylvania, is an author of cryptid books and stories. He has written books such as Sapient, A Brush with the Unknown, and Hybrid Dead, along with others. Without further ado, here is J.W.
Hey, what I want to see, I'd really like to see a whole lot of kids come over here because we got some beach balls. We're going to knock those around. We're going to have some fun with it. We're going to play some audience games. I kind of require audience participation, if y'all don't mind. We got to get some things going like some whoop whoops and some maybe a big on this side. Let's see it. Now we'll do big on this side, foot on this side. You people over here are the big. You people over here are the foot. Remember that. And then after we play it, it's called Bigfoot Ping Pong. All right? 1 second. Let me get into this. Anyway, hello, Squatchers and Squatchlings. I spent a lot of time preparing for this, and I make notes about everything. I look at notes. I get up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I write down notes that other people would look at and go, what the heck is he talking about, But for me, when I compile a book, I have to have information that comes from my head to put it on paper. And so when I speak, I get a little nervous at first, so I guarantee you I'll loosen up and it'll be good. I want to tell you that I've had four wonderful children. Great kids, all of them. I've enjoyed every one of them. And I've had a great time, especially when they were young, torturing the little boogers. Not thumb screws and, waterboarding or anything like that. I just like messing with their heads. And one of the ways that I've done that is, I told my kids one time, look, all cows are named Harry. And they all looked at me like, what are you talking about? I said, yeah, all cows. Every cow that I ever met, his name was Harry. And they're like, no way. I said, yeah. They were all like this big, pint size. And I said to them, I'll tell you what I'll do. Let's all go to the farm down the road. It's like 5 or 6 miles down the road. They said, okay. And I said, I'll prove to you that all cows are named Harry. And they're like, no way. I said, yeah, come on. 12 neighborhood kids plus my 3 in a Volare station wagon, no air conditioning, for like 7 miles on this back road. So I get them out alongside the fence, and there they are standing there. There's all these cows standing out there, and the kids all looked at them, and I said, now watch. The cows were all eating. I said, hey, Harry! All the cows turned their head and looked, and I said, see? And they said, look, that's just not right. So then later on, down the road, I did things to these kids to torture them just to have fun. I told them that all sheep are different from one another. Some sheep are bred so they can eat on the side of a hill. Their legs on one side are shorter than the other. And I actually got them to believe that. So it's a matter of torture. But the other thing is they're open to belief. You know, they want to believe something. And so my whole thing here today is to talk about belief systems. When my wife and I lived on a farm in Slippery Rock, Pennsylvania, my daughter came to me and said, because she loved marshmallows, she'd take marshmallows and carry it around with her. She never ate the marshmallow, she would only lick it. So what she ended up with was this big pile of goo in her hand that she didn't know what to do with it, so she would eventually stick it somewhere. You know, you find them under counters. I found it on a cat one day. You know, the cat didn't appreciate it, but that's the way she was. So I told her when she came to me one day, she said, in this sincere voice, she said, Daddy, where do marshmallows come from? And she holds this thing up, and I look at her and say, honey, I'm glad you asked. So I got down on one knee and I said, I have to tell you the truth. Marshmallows grow on trees. And she's like, really? I said, and I had to qualify that by saying, yeah, and I can prove it. So I set out to proving to her that marshmallows grow on trees. And how I did that was I went up on the hill one day above our farm, and I stripped the ends off of a small maple tree, and I stuck marshmallows all over this tree. Then I ran down to the house, and I said, Summer, you gotta see this. The marshmallows are ripe. So she's like, oh my God, Dad. I said, okay, well, let's go get some. So she climbed into the tractor wagon, and we went up on the hill, and there's this glorious marshmallow tree. I made her day. She believed from then that those marshmallows grew on that tree until she went to school. So what I'm trying to say here is belief systems, when you believe in something, it has to come from when you were a child. You know, I grew up not knowing anything about Sasquatch. I grew up in the country, up in Keewaydin, Pennsylvania. Does anybody know where Keewaydin, Pennsylvania is? Keewaydin, Pennsylvania is northwest or northeast of Frenchville, Pennsylvania. Does anybody know where Frenchville is? No Frenchville. Does anybody? No, honest to God. Then northeast of Clearfield, Pennsylvania. Does anybody know where Clearfield is? Well, yeah, see? That's how far in the country I come from. Okay? And I've seen a lot of things. I've seen and heard everything that you can possibly hear. So that leads me to this story. Alex and I, where's Alex? In the back. Oops. Alex and I were at the camp. I have a camp down here on Marsburg Road, okay? And Alex and I were clearing brush and mowing lawn and stuff like that at the camp. Alex and I were sitting there after about 4 hours of work. We sit there on the deck, and we heard this noise. About, I don't know, it was probably in the south. It's this direction. But this thing, it goes, oh, just like that. And I'm like, Alex looks at me. Alex, am I right? Did it do this?
Oh, yeah.
So then I said, I said, Alex, what was that? And he says, I don't know. And then he said, well, he said, I thought you were going to tell me what it was. You did. And then I said, then he says to me, his eyes were like this big around, he says, I never heard anything like that. I said, well, I don't know what it was. He said, do you think it's going to come here? I said, well, I don't know, but if it does, he can have the camp as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, this actually happened. And then he howled here. And then about, I don't know, it was 4 or 5 minutes later, then it's over here. And same thing. Then about, I don't know, it was another 300 or 400 yards, same thing. And then it got over here. This thing was moving pretty fast, but it seemed like every time it would bellow like that, it would stop. And then it would start again. And I don't know what was, the first thing that went through my head was, That's got to be a Bigfoot. But I didn't want to say that out loud, you know what I mean? Thinking, what else could it be? And because I'm from the country, I've heard it all. I've heard coyotes chattering. I've heard bears. I've heard sheep. I've heard goats, deer. I've heard it all. But when I heard this thing, it was distinct. It had that low, deep sound to it. So that was my first experience with Bigfoot. And I'm not saying that it was a Bigfoot. I'm just saying that that is exactly what I thought it was. Now, one of the things that in our belief systems that we do, that I did in order to write my books that I wrote, I had to look at the numbers because I wasn't actually out there doing the research like these other fellows do. One, I haven't been able to in a long time, but about 8 years ago, I started the research on Sapient, my first book. And after starting that research, I came to look at the numbers of things. I wrote Sapient from a fellow he actually lived in LA, but he moved to Minnesota. And in Minnesota, he had a camp, excuse me, a cabin. He moved into this cabin, and it was a dilapidated thing because him and his wife were having some problems. So he left LA and moved to Minnesota in order to make to just get away. So he bought this property and he's in there, and every day he would pass by his kitchen window. I guess you could call it his window, but he would pass by his kitchen window and he'd see out in the wood line out there 100 yards or so. He said he saw this stump that had been moved from here to here to here. Now we're talking at a place in Black Lake, Minnesota, and there's no one out there. There's really no one out there. And so he said he decided that he was going to go out there and find out what it was. Now bear in mind, he doesn't know the first thing about a Bigfoot. He was from LA, Silicon Valley, worked at a company that develops nanobots. And that's what his job is. So he went out there in the woods, and he went to the wood line. He said this thing, he was looking at the stump, and then when he looked to the east, he said this thing stepped over some brush, and he was face to face with this Sasquatch. Now at first he said he didn't know what it was, and he said there was no way he was going to run. There was no, because food runs, and he didn't know what to do, so all he could think of to do was sit down. So he sat down, and 10 feet from him was this giant being that sat down on the ground too. And they sat down there across from each other, and they're picking dewberries. That's what they called them. Dewberries, wheatgrass, bugs, anything else. He said he would, he said he wouldn't eat the bugs, but he said it was eating bugs like, just picking them and eating them like they were nuts. He said ants didn't matter, and they just sat there. He said he didn't move, nothing, for about 2 hours. I tried to get him to come here, and he said, no way. I said, maybe we can get you to come next year. He said, I'll think about it. But after writing these books, I started thinking to myself, for believers, we have to, for non-believers, which I was a skeptic, I really truly was, because I had never seen anything or heard anything like that. So when I heard this story, I started thinking, I have to have some way of looking at it. If I can't go out in the woods and I can't actually see a Bigfoot for myself, I've got to come up with a way that I can believe. And so what I did was I dug into the numbers. And I started looking at everything from 1950 forward. From about 1950 forward, we can account for everybody from presidents, from Army personnel, from indigenous peoples prior to that, but even from Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, and so forth. But from 1950 forward, we're looking at more of reported cases that are real, true reported cases of Sasquatch. And there's been 3,530 some odd sightings since then. Those are true reported sightings. And then I started thinking, well, if there's been 3,500 reported sightings of actual reported sightings of Sasquatch, then how many are there that were sighted but didn't report it? So I started digging into those numbers, and I found some actuaries. Those are numbers of people who have seen it, have witnessed it, have heard it, but didn't report it. And it comes out to be about 4 to 1. And because it's 4 to 1, that's the minimum number. That ends up being about 18,000 people since 1950 that have seen Sasquatch, have experienced that. I would like to be one of those. I really would. Then again, sometimes I think, well, maybe I wouldn't if the circumstances aren't right. But I looked at it, 18,000 number is, hey, right there's 2 of them right there. I'm getting upstaged, huh? Yo! What up, Squatch? Hey! Squatch. Tell us, what's it like today for you down here at an event that you're at?
Huh.
And he says, huh. Now what? What are you going to do from here?
Disappear?
He's going to disappear now. Anyway, it's good to have you here. I see you're sweating, man. It's a rough day, huh?
Fun day.
Thanks. I got your foot. I'm going to hang it from my mirror. Yeah. Yeah, it does. I made mine in the kitchen. But anyway, I looked at the numbers, and I started thinking to myself, the numbers just don't lie. You know, we've heard everything from people historically that the naysayers all looked at us and said, you're crazy. You didn't see that. Let me ask everybody, does everybody know what a bear looks like? Does everybody know what a stump looks like? Does everybody know what a Bigfoot looks like? Well, now that we have that clear, okay, I'm pretty sure we all know when we see one. And I'm pretty sure that 18,000 people prior to us have seen it too. And then I started thinking to myself, well, how do I get people to understand that are not Sasquatch believers, that are still skeptic about it? My belief is that all you have to do is show them the numbers. You cannot argue with numbers. That it's just a fact. There's too many honest people. What are you going to do? Get 18,000 people in front of you and call them all crazy? Call them all. You can't. It's impossible. So I came here today basically because I'm a writer. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a speaker. I don't have these words that just flow out of my mouth. They all flow from my head onto paper normally. That's what I do. But I've written the 2 books. One is Teen Squatch. Teen Squatch is for kids. Kids need some sort of guidance in what they're looking at and what they're hearing about. Now, we got a whole lot of kids running around here today, and they're all thinking pretty much the same thing. Wonder what this is all about. You know, some of them are going, yeah, Sasquatch, he's the guy. You know what I mean? He's a rock star. For me, kids need something that they can hang their hat on, that they can look at and say, yeah, I believe too. So with the guidance of good people like yourselves and 18,000 people before them, then I looked at, the other thing I looked at was, let's go back before 1950. And that's why I got conflated there for a moment. If you look back through history, all the way back to the Spaniards. The Spaniards had encounters with them. Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone. There's been a raft of people who have written about it, who have talked about it, but when it comes down to it, it's the future people, like our parents and grandparents. Our parents and grandparents were like the Columbuses of Bigfoot world. Columbus went to the New World, he found it, and he came back, and he had to report to the Queen. And he says, "Oh, yeah, I found the New World." Well, okay. And she believed him. Now, they had their detractors. The detractors said, "Nah, he's just trying to be famous. Nah, he's just trying to be money." But no, here we are standing on that New World. And how many people called him crazy? So, in short, I kind of shortened this whole thing up because there's some things I was going to do, but I decided not to. But believing, to me, is all part and parcel to who you are. If you want to believe that Sasquatch exists, then that's what you do. And use the numbers to back up what you have to say. And I don't want to take up a lot more of your time, but that's where I'm at with that. All I wanted to say, is because I don't have a lot of kids here. I figured I would have the kids, but I'm not getting them. So I was going to turn some things loose and have some fun. But maybe I'll see you next year, and we'll get a better handle on with the information I have to provide to you for sightings and things like that. Sapient 1 I just released here not too long ago, but Sapient 2 is on its way out, and that will be 12 stories and accountings from folks like you that I'm going to write these stories about, and then we'll run that through Amazon for everyone. But I want to thank you for being here today. I want to spend many more of your time. I just believing is important, and we got to start with kids and then nurture that and grow that. But don't be afraid to torture the little buggers. You know what I mean? I did. I loved them to death, but I would torture them with everything I could, do just to keep their attention. They ended up being these great people, so and they question everything, just like I did. I questioned everything that anybody has ever told me. So that's how I ended up writing Sapient. Like I said, I was a skeptic. In fact, I was probably closer to non-believer. I was thinking to myself, how could that be possible? But I ended up writing the story, and now I am a firm believer because of good, honest people like yourselves reporting on what they see. So anyway, I'm J.W. Burchick. I'm just glad to take your time. And if you have any questions, I'm over here in the booth on the row. So just you guys have a good day. And any report you have, just give me a yell. If you have a story that you want to tell and I can write it, I'll do that. I'm better at writing than I am at speaking. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.